Well, mate, firstly, I think we'll get started. We've got about 170 on, which is good numbers. First, mate, thanks for jumping on, giving you time for, to sort of give the kids something to sort of listen to and look forward to, mate. We've had a really good first week and good feedback. I think the kids really enjoyed it. So, thanks for that, Fultz.
Cheers, mate.
And we've got Kyle Jemison coming up in week 4, I think, up and coming. All-rounder. Surely he can claim himself as an all-rounder.
Yeah, he became close. He's actually, he's always had some ability with the bat.
Yeah.
Because I played with him. He was sort of starting just as I was finishing. He's always had some ability, but he actually, I would probably say that, his batting in the couple of the games that he's played 2 tests and a couple of one-days, his batting has actually been more impressive than what I probably thought.
Yeah.
He's actually, he's probably scored more runs at international level than he does at first level. So,
well, you've obviously had a fair bit to do with him as a batting coach, those 2 tests.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. So, it's only early days, but he's come in, he's done really well. He's done, and a couple of innings he played against India was like.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to cut the order a bit.
Yeah, maybe. So,
so I guess for those of you who don't know, you're the New Zealand batting coach now, mate. How long have you been in that job for? Sort of half a year now, or a bit longer?
Since after the World Cup last year. So my first sort of tour was the tour to Sri Lanka in August last year. So just probably 6 or 7 months. So it's been a pretty busy sort of 6 or 7 months. We're obviously a lot of cricket and had a couple of tours away and stuff like that. But really, really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and obviously you had a pretty illustrious career, mate, especially at sort of first class level, scoring over 10,000 runs for Canterbury. And then also, obviously, I think I was looking today. How many tests did you play? 20 odd?
Oh, you're 20, early 20, 21.
Yeah, 51 days. And actually have some footage, mate. So bear with me. Share screen.
It's good.
This will be good, mate. No dancing the Spice Girls.
No, it's probably not. I don't know if there's any good footage there. Is there? I'm not sure.
So this is against England, isn't it?
Yeah.
The first one, 99. Go on, Fultz. Moved pretty quick there, mate.
Yeah. Well, when you're on 99, you have to, don't you?
So that was your first ton.
Yeah.
2013, mate. Is that correct?
Yeah. 2013. This was the 3rd test against England at Eden Park.
You went bang, didn't you?
Well,
yeah. No, it was a pretty good wicket, but like I say, I probably at that stage when I sort of came back in the team, I probably sort of thought that maybe I wasn't going to play again. So to get a chance to play again, Test cricket, and then to get 100 was it was just a relief, to be honest. It was more of a relief than anything. I was just like, finally, something that I dreamed about. Finally, I've done it, and yeah.
Who did they have? Who was their attack, mate? Was obviously Broad was there. Anderson was he?
Broad, Anderson, Finn, and Monty Panesar was the attack.
That's fair. All right, paint a picture here, mate. So second dig.
So second dig, we were about 170, 180 in front in the first innings, but then we were about I think at the end of day 3, I think we were about 15 for 3, sort of overnight. So we were sort of ahead in the game, but we're obviously 15 for 3. So it was sort of still like the next day, if we'd lost a couple of early wickets, we might have been in a little bit of trouble. But we managed to get through that sort of first hour relatively unscathed, and then we sort of kicked on. And there's not many times in Test cricket when you actually get to bat, and there's not a lot of pressure on. Obviously, there's normally heaps of pressure. So it was a good chance to, I guess, play some shots and have a little bit of fun.
Express yourself, mate. And this is Fultz expressing himself. Oh. What were you on there, mate?
98, I think.
All right, hang on. Talk us through that then. What are you thinking? 98. What do you think? He was
he was sort of bowling. He had a bit of a he sort of had quite a packed offside ring field, and he's just sort of trying to bowl outside off stump. So I'd hit a couple straight to on the ground to cover, and couldn't quite pierce the field, and I just sort of thought, well, pitches one up.
McCullum give you a spray from the other end to get on with it.
It might be easier to hit one over the top rather than through the field. So yeah, luckily he put one right where
slot.
Slaughter, right? I'll need to listen to that sound again.
It was a good bat, that one. That was a nice bat.
What stick? What was it? What did you use?
It was Gunner Moore. So like I said, I think I've still got that one actually. But yeah, that was a nice bat. So yeah, the second one was it was pretty satisfying because the whole way through that series I'd copped a lot of stick from the Poms. So so it was nice to get some runs and sort of shut them up for a while.
Mate, brilliant. I guess while we're on that, normally we sort of go back through your journey, mate, growing up, and we'll touch on that. But you said it was like a relief that happened. And obviously, I guess we can start from when you were a kid. What was the build up to that point, mate? Because how old were you then when you schooled that? Were you 30, 35?
What was that? That was 7 years ago. So I was 33.
Yeah.
And like I say, if we go back to the beginning, so I was like all the young fellas watching this. Grew up playing cricket at home with my dad and my three brothers, and went down to the local club and all that sort of thing, and just did nothing sort of, I guess, unusual or different. Loved the game from a young age, and like I say, started off going out playing in my brother's team, or watching probably for a start, and then they only have 10 players, so you get roped into field, and then eventually someone will let you have a bat, and then you have a bowl, and it just sort of it started sort of like it does for a lot of kids probably. Went through, I probably again, like a lot of kids, I sort of, my dad played a bit of cricket, not at a real high level, but he was a decent cricketer, and he probably gave me a bit of coaching and advice along the way. But probably when I was a young fella, I just sort of thought, what does he know that he's only my dad? Like, he doesn't know anything.
Yeah. Standard.
And you'd go to a coaching clinic or something, and the coaches would give you a bit of advice, and you go home and Dad would say, "Oh, what'd you learn today?" And I said, "Oh, he said I had to get my top elbow up," and my dad's probably thinking, "Well, I've been telling you that for the last 3 years, but you didn't." So. I made a few rep teams, I guess from the age of 12 through to 17, 18, but not all the time. So I definitely wasn't one of these kids that are the best player in every team, the whole way through and stuff like that. Yeah. I just love playing, and I think probably the thing for me, I would say from about the age of about 16, 17, I think I probably improved like 5% every year.
How did you do that, mate?
What's that?
How did you do that? Was that just through working balls?
Yeah, I guess just practice. Practice probably mainly. I to be honest, I lived and breathed cricket. So I was always watching it, listening on the radio, playing in the backyard, playing at school, playing from a club. And I guess I was probably a little bit like a sponge, really. Yeah. I just wanted to learn, and listen to as much as I could. And like I say, I got better probably 5% or whatever every year. And those kids who, when I was 16, 17, who were like, they were the gun players, they probably didn't improve as much or stayed at about the same level. And, within 3 or 4 years, I guess if I improved 5% every year, 3 or 4 years, I'd improve 20%, and I sort of ended up going past them.
Yeah. At that stage, was your goal to play professionally, or?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't. The game back then wasn't. So this is probably, we're talking when I left school. Jesus, a long time ago. So it's probably 96, 97. So it wasn't as professional as what it is now. So there probably wasn't the, if I wanted to play for Canterbury, which is, the first class team that I played for in New Zealand, it wasn't so much I can play for Canterbury and I can be a professional cricketer and make my living doing that. It was I can play for Canterbury, or I can play for New Zealand, and that'll be an amazing honour. It wasn't quite the same. Yeah, there wasn't quite the same, I guess, financial pathway as what there is now for kids coming through.
Yeah.
Even not long ago, was the domestic system in New Zealand, the players were only contracted for like 6 months or something. It wasn't a full 12 months.
Back in those days, basically the first class players, it was sort of amateur, I guess.
Yeah.
There's probably a few of them. The ones that played international cricket would have been, were sort of professional, but a lot of the other, well, probably half the first class teams at that stage, half the players were, probably semi-professional. So they'd play cricket during the summer, during the winter they'd go and they'd have a job,
Yeah.
that they'd do in the winter. So you couldn't really, unless you were one of the top New Zealand players, you couldn't really do it full time in those days.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, I really wanted to play for Canterbury and play for New Zealand, but not because I wanted to necessarily make a living out of it, just because I obviously was desperate to do that. And yeah, obviously then probably when I started, I played for Canterbury in 2001. And within a couple of years after that, everything changed and sort of professional contracts and stuff came into play for domestic cricket, and yeah, it's sort of grown from there.
I guess then, what age did you make your New Zealand debut then, mate?
So my New Zealand debut was end of 2004. So what was I then? I was 24, almost 25. So I played sort of three and a half years for Canterbury. And first tour was to Bangladesh, one-day tour to Bangladesh. And, yeah, which was interesting because back then Bangladesh was a pretty interesting place to go. It's still probably, it's pretty, to be honest, it's pretty third world. Even now it's probably, it's reasonably third world. So, yeah, 2004, it was definitely a culture shock. I had no idea what I was really getting myself into, and it was a bit different to Christchurch in New Zealand, but yeah, still a great thrill to make my debut. I played this 3-game series. I played one game, got a game, and I think probably in hindsight, when I look back, I was probably there. They were just looking to blood me. Really, it was we'll take a young guy over there who's done well in domestic cricket and done all right in the New Zealand A setup, and we'll take him over there, and we'll give him a wee taste.
Yeah, and then did you continue to play?
So then the rest of when we came back to, this was in November, we came back to New Zealand. That home summer, I just played domestic cricket. I didn't play for New Zealand, and then the following year, I got picked in the New Zealand team, and sort of. It was a bit more of a sort of a regular side from then.
And then, so did you spend any a lengthy amount of time out of the New Zealand team then, or were you fairly consistent?
Yeah, so I played probably for 2 years, from 2005 to 2007. I guess as a regular fixture, I pretty much played most games for a couple of years. Then I had a few problems with my knee. Ended up having an operation, and it didn't really fix the problem. It was okay, but it didn't really heal properly. And I tried to carry on playing on it. It didn't quite sort of, I guess, work as well as I wanted. And my form sort of fell away, and I ended up being sort of out of the team for. I was probably out of the team for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years, came back in, played one-day cricket. And I think when you look at my record, my one-day record was actually better than my test record. And probably people over my career would have said, he'd be a better red ball cricketer. But
I definitely thought that going before I looked at the stats today.
Yeah, but my one-day record was actually a lot better. You know, and it probably doesn't stack up as well these days because obviously the scoring rates are a bit quicker. But yeah, I had quite a good one-day record, and I actually did quite well against Australia, funnily enough. So, which is something I probably look back on in my career and I'm quite proud of because at the time, sort of 2006 to 2009, the Australian team was obviously pretty strong. So that's something that I was I guess I'm quite proud of as well.
Okay, going back to those 2 years that you weren't in the setup, mate, coming back from your knee op, I guess a lot of kids can probably relate to that, whether they get left out of a rep team for maybe that they were in the year before or something along those lines. How did you approach that situation? Was it just simply going back to Canterbury and scoring a truckload? Yeah,
basically. I mean, I think I sort of got. I think probably in my international career, I sort of got dropped 2 or 3 times, and to be honest, every time I got dropped, like I can actually, when I look back now, at the time I was disappointed and gutted and angry and stuff like that. But when I look back at it now, I got dropped. Like I wasn't performing. I wasn't scoring, the runs that I should have been or could have been. So I think that's one of those things, especially when you're young, is you're always looking at what's the next team that I can make, or there's a rep team coming up, or I want to get picked for this team, or I want to, whatever it might be. And I think what I probably fell into the trap of at that stage was I was always looking at what's coming up next and what do I have to do to get picked in this team, and if I score some runs, I'll get picked in that team. And quite simply, I just got excuse me, I just got distracted from what I actually needed to do.
Yeah.
Actually just worry about the next training session, the next game, even simpler than that, the next ball. Instead of worrying about, you go out to bat and I want to be on, I wish I was on 30 or 40 already and smacking the ball everywhere. You've actually got to do the hard work at the start of your innings to get in. And like I said, the further you look ahead, sometimes the worse it actually ends up for you. So, yeah, big lesson for me was I actually couldn't control. I was injured a little bit. I couldn't control that, as much as I liked. And I probably, in hindsight, wish that I'd actually taken a little bit longer to come back from that injury, got my knee right, and then actually played when I was 100% rather than trying to rush it. And as a result, I didn't score any runs. You don't score runs, you're probably not going to get picked.
Yeah. I think sort of the generation playing now and the kids coming through, it's probably even harder for them to stay in the moment and just think about the next ball and be present just with everything that's going on, and everything's at their touch their fingertips, they have it. So did you find that anything helped you to deal with that and stay a bit more present towards the back end of your career, or was it just experience?
No. I mean, I remember when I started out. So when I started playing, no one did mental skills, or very few players did anything to do with mental skills. If someone said, mental skills, do you want to work with a mental skills coach? People would have said, why would I want to do that?
Yeah.
I don't want to sit on the couch and talk to the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost non-existent, wasn't it? It's really
It was almost considered a sign of weakness. You don't want to admit that you've got some doubts or whatever. And probably in my career, one of the big things I learned early on was that even the best players, the great players, they have the same insecurities and doubts as everyone else.
Yeah.
They get just as nervous. They go through periods where they feel like they're not batting well, or they're not bowling well, or they have no confidence. They've all got exactly the same issues.
Yeah.
Probably the difference is they either have someone that they can talk to about it. Now they have they might have a mental skills coach or someone else, or a coach that they can talk to, or another player. Or they're just strong enough, up here, that they accept that they're going to feel like that sometimes I'm going to be nervous or I'm not going to feel great when I go out to bat. But, I know that if I can just get through that first few balls or I can get through that first hour, then I can go on and, everything's going to get better.
Yeah, mate.
What are some of the most common, I suppose, tools or techniques that you see at the top level that those players use to try and nip those negative thoughts in the bud quickly? Is there something consistently used, or is it really individualised and different?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but I think probably routines.
Yeah.
And that'll be different for all of them. Like some guys have got, completely different routines, but that could be a cue. When the bowler's running in as a batsman, that could be a cue, a couple of words that you say.
Yeah.
It could be something physical. So if you look at someone like, you look at Steve Smith, he's fidgeting around, he's playing with his thigh pad, his box, and his gloves and all this sort of thing. That's actually a routine that he's doing.
Yeah.
He's not doing that because his box is uncomfortable or his thigh pad doesn't fit. He's doing it because it's a routine. Kane Williamson, who I think we might be going to talk about a little bit later on, he twirls his bat in his hands,
blows
almost while the bowler's running in. He blows, puts his hand up and he blows on his gloves. Like those are things that he probably didn't even realise he was doing it years ago. But then at some point he did realise, and then he's decided to carry on doing it because it's just his way of making sure that, as you say, he's present in the moment. When the ball in, he's literally just worrying about the ball that's going to be bowled to him rather than thinking about 100 other things.
Brilliant,
yeah, it's funny to say that.
I actually did a webinar last week on pre-ball routines. So I hope the 200 or so participants of that webinar understand now that I wasn't just making it up.
Yeah,
that's absolutely brilliant. Mate, I guess we'll go into a little bit of, your role as a New Zealand batting coach. What does a normal kind of session look like for the Black Caps going into a test, series or something like that, and maybe focusing more so on the batters? Is it really individualised, or do you follow a plan and then batters sort of have extra hits and things like that after?
So what will normally happen? I mean, I think. So let's say we've got a test match, and you might have 3 or 4 days before the game. The day before the game starts, the training will basically be whatever the players want to do. So, as an example, some of the bowlers the day before a game will literally come to training. They'll warm up. They might have a bit of game, soccer, or whatever they might play for a warm up game. And then some of the bowlers will probably. That'll be all they'll do. They might actually just go back to the hotel and put their feet up and just get ready for the next game, for the next day. Similar with the batters, some of them will go in the nets and they might bat for a while. Some of them might only just want to have some throws and make sure they're feeling good and then they're right to go. But the trainings before that, so 2 days out, 3 days out, there'll be a little bit of a structure. So there'll be a structure in the nets. Who's bowling this many overs, where the batters are going to go. And you'll try and, the coaches will try and simulate that as best they can for the game. So if we're playing Australia, for example, the opening batters will try and make sure they face a left arm, swing bowler where possible, because Mitchell Stark's going to be playing, or we'll try and make sure that they face some off spin because they're going to be facing Nathan Lyon.
Yeah.
So probably half the training will be structured in terms of this is what you're going to do, this is who you're going to face, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second half of training is probably what the player wants to do. So some of them might want some throws from a coach. Some of them might want someone with the sidearm. They might say, look, can you come around the wicket and try and bowl short into my ribs, because that's what I'm expecting, in the game. There'll be a whole lot of different things that individuals will want. And it's, a little bit of a balance between trying to make sure that they're prepared for the game as best they can be, but also allowing them to work on the things that they want to work on too.
Yeah. And I've always wondered this looking at other teams, and it's great that you're on here and you might be able to answer it, but I've always wondered how much information or how much feedback batting coaches actually give the batters, I guess, because they're at a level, obviously the batters, they're very good players. You have to be playing international level. Are you really selective? Obviously, good coaches are selective when to give feedback and what kind of feedback, but how much do you generally give sort of at that level?
It all depends, really. It depends. It can vary. Well, it does vary from player to player, and it can also vary from training to training. So I'll give you an example. So someone like Tom Latham really likes getting that feedback and having that conversation with the coach. So, whatever it might be that he's talking about, he wants to hear your thoughts, and he wants to almost, I guess it's almost that self-affirmation. So he's talking to you, and he's looking for you to either say, "Yep, that's what I see. What you're talking about is right. That's what I see," or actually, "Nah, I think actually, you're just opening up a little bit there, or you're coming a little bit inside the ball." And so some guys like a lot of conversation. Someone like Kane Williamson probably, again, will vary. Sometimes he'll be talking the whole way through. If I'm in the net throwing to him or flinging to him, he'll be talking the whole way through, and he'll be asking questions or looking for feedback.
Yeah.
And other times he might go on the net and say, "Look, I'm trying to work on my balance here today, so can you just watch my head to see if it's tipping over towards the off stump? And if it's not, sweet, that's fine. Other than that, I don't want to know anything. That's all I want." So you literally throw the ball. You might throw balls to him for half an hour, and you might say 2 sentences because he only wants you to look at his head position. And if his head position's good, he doesn't want to know anything else. And I think that's, again, probably part of the art of coaching, I guess, is work that out, talk to the players so you can actually understand that and, find out what makes them tick, and, because they're all different. They're all very, very different.
Yeah, you have to know your player, obviously, don't you?
Yeah.
We might get into some Q&As now, I think. Maybe just for 10 minutes or so, we'll answer some, and then we'll get stuck into the Kane Williamson analysis. So, Fitz, did you have one? I haven't gone through yet, but here we go. Who's the hardest worker you have sort of coached, other than Kane Williamson, if he is the hardest?
I think, I mean, Kane Williamson, he definitely hits a lot of balls. I think Tom Latham, who I mentioned earlier, he probably is right up there. And I think Kane probably 3 or 4 years ago, I think probably would have hit more balls than Tom Latham. But I think now it's probably, as Kane's got a little bit older, I think he's just dialed it back a little bit. In terms of how much he does. He obviously plays a lot of cricket all around the world, all 3 formats. So, I think sometimes he's just worked out that he just has to do a little bit less now. I think probably Tom Latham in the New Zealand team, is probably the one that, that hits the most balls from what I've seen. But again, a lot of international players, they all hit a lot of balls. They all hit a lot of balls. If it was as simple as just how many balls you hit, then it would be quite an easy game. But you've obviously got to hit them and be very specific about what you're doing as well. And someone like Kane, that's why I think, he's one of the reasons he's as good as he is because he hits a lot of balls, but he does it with a lot of purpose as well.
Fultz, there's been a few different questions just basically around playing for New Zealand, so I've grouped them together. Someone's asked what it was like firstly to find out that you were making your debut, and then a couple asked about can you describe what it feels like to play in front of a crowd and also to face like international level bowlers bowling at 135, 140 k's an hour.
Okay. I think in terms of making your debut, I think your first game especially is just a different feeling to well, for me, it was a different feeling. So my first game was just, I guess, straight excitement and sort of nervous energy and stuff like that. And you're almost in your first few games, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. You're just so excited to be playing, and it's a new experience. So yeah, it was just my first game for me was a bit of a blur, really. It all just went like that. And before I knew it, the game was over, and I was just like, oh, geez, that's how fast did that go? And then then you play a bit more, and you get a lot more comfortable, and you sort of realise everything that goes into it. So yeah, the feeling was just pure excitement to be able to do something that I'd obviously dreamed about doing for a long time. As far as the crowds go, I mean, yeah, it can be a little bit tricky, early on. Not so much, I think, for batting and bowling, because once you get out there in the middle, you're sort of focused on what you're doing, so you don't really notice the crowd. But I think probably in the field is the biggest adjustment, especially when you go somewhere where there's big crowds. There's a lot of noise. It's not like playing a club game where if you're out at deep square leg and you sort of start to drift off, and the captain can yell out and get your attention and get you to move 15 metres to your left. Attention, you can get easily lost out there, and obviously the places you go to, England, South Africa, Australia. As a New Zealander, you probably you cop a bit of stick on the boundary. So that's always a new for a few guys to get used to.
And mate, I guess on the subject of routines, did you have a routine? Were you aware of one when you were batting?
Yeah. So my routine was, so if you think about the crease where the white lines are, and at the crease, it's basically a like a rectangle. So my routine was, in between balls, I'd have to walk outside that rectangle, that box. And I'd walk out towards square leg, and I'd sort of walk outside of those 4 white lines, and that was almost like, when I was out there, that was my time when I could think about whatever else I wanted. So, it might be about the ball before, and if it's swung or whatever, good or bad, how I played it. It might be something completely different. It might be looking up on the bank and looking at the scoreboard, or something completely random. But it was almost like that was my little I guess area where I could think whatever I wanted. When I walked back inside the box, that was my cue to switch back on and to think about the next ball. So yeah, that was something that I did in my career, and I can think about times in my career where I didn't do that. I didn't follow that routine, and I can think about times now where I got out when I didn't do it, and I'd walk off, I'd be sitting there in the sheds taking my pads off, thinking, why didn't I do it?
Yeah.
And why didn't I just stick to my routine? It wasn't going to guarantee me that I was going to score runs, but yeah, that for me was just a good way of making sure that, yeah, almost like flicking on the light switch. Right, I'm back in. The light switch is on now, and it's time to concentrate, because you can't. If you want to bat for a whole day, you want to bat 6.5 hours. You can't be, concentrating full on the whole time, because you'll just burn out.
Yeah, I like that one. I haven't heard that one before. Maybe did Sunshine Coast where our rectangle's not the right size or something, mate?
No, that wasn't quite a straight line. It must have been.
I'll blame the groundsman.
Exactly.
Nick, have you got one, or are we right to head in?
There was one there was a couple around about like going into rep trials. Have you got any advice for kids on the mindset to take into and the approach to take into trials?
Yeah. Again, I think like a rep trial is it's no different to playing a game. It's the same. It's probably the same feeling that people have whether they're playing first class cricket or international cricket. when maybe they've missed out 2 or 3 games in a row, and they're a bit they're desperate to get a score, or they're really nervous because they know they need to score runs. It's no different, I guess, the feeling that you have. Again, I come back to those routines, or finding a way to be able to actually just focus on the next ball, because every batsman will have those times when you're at the crease and you're distracted, you're thinking about something else. It might be, you haven't scored runs for the last 3 games. You might have got 2 ducks in a row. Maybe it's this guy's got me out a couple of times before, or geez, this guy's bowling quick. He's, or is he going to bowl me a bouncer? All those different things that you have as a batsman that actually distract you, and they take away your focus from, what's actually happening that ball. And I know when I first started playing for New Zealand, against Australia as an example, and I was playing, facing Glenn McGrath, and I'd grown up watching him on TV, and then you're out there facing him, and he's running into bowler's first ball, and you're thinking, oh geez, this is Glenn McGrath. He's got 500 Test wickets or whatever. And it's hard to get those feelings or those thoughts out of your mind sometimes. So just try and find a way to be able to actually focus on the next ball, and not be distracted by that other stuff that's swirling around.
Yeah, I think, and that's where routines come into it, Fultz, isn't it, as well? And I think we speak to a lot of young players, and I speak to a lot of batters. It's good to acknowledge those sort of negative thoughts. I think some, especially young players, think it and go, oh no, I can't believe I'm thinking that, I shouldn't be thinking that, and then it just snowballs a bit and does, makes your performance worse or gives you less chance of performing.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into this little Kane Williamson analysis. Now, I've made a little slideshow here, Fultz. Mm-hmm. I hope my key points are correct. You might just blow them out of the water. So yeah, we'll go for about sort of 15 minutes here, mate, if that's all right. I love that. How good's that? My PowerPoint.
Beautifully done, mate.
That's pretty good, that. All right, so what we'll do first, what we might do, Fitz, do you reckon you could just sort of have a little bit of a look in the chat box? Because I'll try and get everyone to have, see if they can sort of tell us why they think sort of Kane Williamson's set up so good, and how that helps him be as good as he is.
So, right now, you want answers now?
No, I'll play the video, so as the video's going. So just looking at his setup, what are some key points there? What does he do well in his setup? So before he plays the shot.
Balanced and steady, still head, deep in the crease, gets back high, strong stance, front foot out, good footwork.
Yeah, so that's a little bit after. I'll go on this as well. What does he do differently facing Mitch compared to Josh Hazlewood? So we got Mitch Johnson coming in. Have a look at his setup. Just his setup and the righty. How's that different?
What's he do differently? Pop it in the chat box. He's more open to Johnson, stands deeper in the crease.
Spot on. So I think a lot of young players just have the same setup, no matter if they're right arm round or if you're a lefty or left arm bowler. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that as well. So I'm pretty sure that all the boys sort of nailed it there. All the people watching nailed it. But yeah, open stance, that gives him access, I guess, to the ball. It allows him to have his eyes level. Big one is his backlift faults. Have you got anything on that? Obviously, he's in nice and tight. And we'll go a little bit more into his sort of, I guess, open face and all that. But I reckon he's one of the most compact players you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Fultz?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what the guys, some of the people have touched on, his head, and you talk about getting your right eye, across to off stump, so you can judge where your off stump is.
That's for right-handers, yeah, so your back eye.
for right-handers, and he does that. He does that really well. I mean, I think, as you can see now, Hazelwood, he's probably he's more almost past off stump because he's come wide in the crease. But you get that right eye across to off stump, and then you're in a really good position to be able to play the ball. And probably what I think a lot of young players, and it can be a little bit difficult because you grow up maybe playing on pitches that aren't quite as true, and the bounce isn't as consistent. But by and large, in international cricket, you can bat on off stump, because if the bowler bowls at middle stump, or even middle and off, because the bounce is so consistent, you can actually, that's actually two straight.
Yeah.
So that's something I think young players don't actually always understand, is that bowling at middle stump at international cricket is too, and a lot of guys that's just easy. So like I say, he gets across to outside or on off stump really well. And the other thing I always like to look for in a player is his front foot. It generally only moves once. So he's in a position as the ball's being released out of the bowler's hand that his front foot hasn't already moved or hasn't started to move too much.
Yeah.
But if it moves too early, he's going to end up planting his front foot, and his front foot's going to end up planting sort of to off stump or outside off stump, and then he's going to have to move it again. So you watch Kane, and he almost never gets out LBW. He very rarely gets out LBW, and that's because he literally is his balance is such that his front foot can go to the line of the ball, no matter where it is. Whereas you see a lot of guys they'll plant across to off stump, and then if the ball's straight, they've got to play around their front pad, and then they're a chance of getting out LB.
Brilliant segue, mate. As we go into sort of his movement here, we're probably, I think it's the first video here that we'll look at what Fultz was touching on there, just the timing of that front foot movement as well. And before we see that, I think it's important to identify and realise, like, we're analysing Kane's technique here. Just because he does things this way doesn't mean that everyone on here, they have to go out and copy. There might be certain components that you might take away and try, and you might try everything that you see on here and find what works for you. I guess just on that, Fultz, is that something that sort of you're pretty, or you try and stress to, I guess, young players as well? And you'd see it in the New Zealand setup as well. Everyone has a different technique. Yeah,
absolutely. I think some of the things that we'll talk about are I guess, are a non-negotiable. So that head position, I think, is one thing that's a non-negotiable. Like, you want to have as little head movement as possible. And I think sometimes you see that in not just young players, but any player, is that especially for guys who have a pre-ball movement, you have to be really careful that your head isn't moving too much as well. So some batsmen will have a pre-ball movement. Some won't really have one at all, or not one that they're aware of. But you have to be really, really clear around, if you're going to have a pre-ball movement, especially, that your head still has to be very still. And you can see from when you watch this footage of Kane, his head is it is so still. Yeah. It is ridiculously still. And even, you talk about someone like Steve Smith, who does have a big pre-ball movement. When you watch his head, as the ball's released, his head is very still. And if his head's still, then his eyes are going to be still too.
I'll tell you, just on that, I was going to sort of leave that for maybe a bit later, but his front foot doesn't move either, does it, Fultz? He takes a large pre-movement, but that's his back foot going across to off stump. And then he his front foot stays sort of away and then sort of hovers and comes into the ball after it's delivered. Yeah,
again, one of the things that he talks about a lot is he talks about small, quick movements, whether it's forward or back. He doesn't want to have a long, slow movement. He'd rather have a really short movement that's quick and fast, as opposed to a long movement. And again, that's I think something that young players, it's a bit harder to do, because again, he's playing on surfaces that are that are a bit or a lot truer than probably what young cricketers come through. So he can afford to not take a long stride towards the ball to hit a half volley, because the surface is very good. But the principle is the same. Like I say, he wants a short, sharp movement that happens a little bit later, as opposed to something that's long and slow. And if it's long and slow, you're going to have to start earlier, and that's again where you run a risk of, moving too soon, planting your front foot, and getting stuck.
Yeah, I love that. So we'll watch the bottom one first. And what we want to keep an eye on here is Kane's front foot in relation to when the ball's been released. So you can see there, it's been released. I know it's a bit sort of dodgy footage, but I'm pretty sure it's been released. You can see there his front foot is still yet to really move. He's obviously tracking the ball, judging what length it is. Oh no, it was going so well. And then it's just a simple movement with that head still. Oh, Peter. Can't stop it. Look again, the ball's released. It's probably, a quarter of the way down until he makes that front foot movement, I'd say. That fair, Fulton?
Yeah. And that's, like I say, that's probably one of the easiest ways. If you think about someone who's, at training, with a mate or with their mum or the dad or whoever, a really good thing that I like to, I guess, even at international level, is to actually look at footage of someone, camera from behind the stumps with it from an umpire's view, and actually just freeze the shot at the point of release from the bowler, and then just have a look and look at two things. Look at what your head position, or where your head position is, and see, is it balanced? Is it moving? And also look at your front foot. And like, as you say, that I guess that idea about almost having your front foot hovering. So it's just started to move as the ball's being released, right at that point of release. It's just started to move, or it's just starting to come off the ground, I think is probably close to the ideal. And that way, if the ball's full, you can just take a stride into the ball. But if it's short, then you can quickly transfer your weight backwards. And I think that's, when you look at some of the great players, that's why it looks like they've got so much time. It's not that they have better hand-eye coordination or better reflexes than anyone else. It's the fact that the way they transfer their weight, they create time because they're not having to, make unnecessary movement. So they're not lunging on the front foot and then trying to push back. They're sort of halfway in between. And then once they pick up the line of the ball, they can either go forward or back.
Geez, I love this, Fulton. We could be here till 10 p.m. My big, huge one for that was punter. You saw the ball and
yeah, exactly.
That hover foot going sort of up in the air, and then he just made a quick decision. As soon as if the bowler just held the ball a little bit longer, he knew that was going to be short, and he was rocking back, waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, that's why the great players of the short ball, that's why it looks like they have more time. It's because they're able to cut out that unnecessary movement, and also, like I said, they pick up the length of the ball because they know that, from that point of release, the longer the ball's in the hand of the bowler, then the shorter the ball has to be. So,
yeah. And you mentioned weight transfer, and I think Kane obviously does this really well, but it's kind of interlinked with that late movement of when you're pushing forward. So we'll look at this footage. I don't know if I can pause it. I don't. Oh, no, there we go. Can. But I can't go back. Can I just love on this one, if we go back, you see that front foot's going late. It's one movement at the ball, but also that it allows him, by stepping into the ball and having a late movement, it allows that weight transfer through the front knee, but it also allows his bat to keep moving. I think that's really important as well. If we look at his bat here, go back a bit, hang on, bear with me. It's just continually moving through the ball, up and through the ball. And clearly that allows him to hit it late and have that full weight transfer through.
Yeah, so Kane talks a lot about about having a snap. He talks about it as having that snap, and that's what he's talking about. He's talking about how he's getting himself in a position, and then everything's I guess in the right position to play the shot, and then the last thing that comes through is the bat, and you saw that on that video. So he's his front foot, he gets his weight into the ball, pushes off that back foot stride into the ball, and then the last thing that comes through, head still, is the bat just comes through at the last minute. And like I say, that's why he talks about that snap at the last minute, where his body and his everything else has done all the work for him, and the bat coming through is actually almost the last part of it.
Yeah.
As opposed to just using his hands to throw the bat at the ball, he's actually using his whole body to get himself in a great position, and then the bat snaps through at the last minute, and that's how he generates his power. Because I mean, he's a small bloke, and you wouldn't say he's a power hitter, but after 6 or 7 months of throwing to him in the nets, he can hit it as hard as anyone.
Yeah, I love that, the snap. I think what's this one? So back foot shots. Then is part of that snap as well. Faults where he gets his bat up to. So it's obviously high hands, open bat face, and then it's that late, as you say, that late movement of snapping down on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he's got, I guess when you look at his backlift, it's a little bit, I mean, it's not unorthodox, but there's a few moving parts there. So he sort of, as you watch the bowler run in, he almost, as the bat's going up and his backlift as the bowler's coming in, he almost regrips the bat with his bottom hand.
Yeah.
And that's quite unusual. He probably doesn't even really know he's doing it. But he sort of regrips it with his bottom hand, and he almost sort of double pumps. He's got a double pump, which I think is probably another thing where because he has hit so many balls, he's just grooved that so that it's the same every time.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of movement there, but like I say, it's the advantage is that it's a bit probably like a golf club. He's not just taking his bat back and holding it there still for 2 or 3 seconds before the bowler bowls the ball and then trying to move. It's a fluid motion, so to speak.
I've noticed it before, but I noticed it again today, that bottom hand, how you said regrip. I thought it might have just been a cue for him to relax his bottom hand or something, because I thought he was relaxing it, but I think you obviously know more. Like, is it?
I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, whether he's really conscious of it or not. I know that in his when he first grips the bat and in his stance, his bat face is actually a little bit closed.
Yeah, I know.
And then when he, like I said, as the bowler's running in about to bowl, he regrips it and he actually opens it as well slightly. So, like I say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly why he does that. But it's obviously something like he's consistent in it, and that's probably the other thing is, again, we're talking about all different players. It's not so much what they do; it's the fact that they do it consistently. So it works for him.
Yeah,
he does it every ball, whether it's whether he's on 1 or whether he's on 100.
You're spot on. In his setup, he looks like he couldn't hit a ball through the offside because his bat's so close because of that bottom hand. And yeah, you're right, isn't it? When he lifts it in his back lift, it really opens up and allows him to hit everywhere.
Yeah.
We'll just look at back foot shots. I think you get a pretty good view of it here. And we'll just talk about back foot shots here then, Fitz, and just monitor the chat box. What does he do really well here then, guys? Pop it in the chat box.
Plays late, gets nice and high.
Spot on.
Gets on top of the ball, back and across, transfers weight, waits for it.
Yeah.
Head over the ball. Yep. So a lot of transfer weight, getting over the ball, getting nice and high.
Pretty
Good
much.
Footwork.
Yeah, spot on there. I think probably the thing that can relate to juniors a bit more and what he does really well, and I see with a lot of junior batters not do, I guess, and maybe a little bit of his strength, possibly. Just that open bat face and high hands. I think that's the only way you're going to be able to play a back foot punch or a really good cut shot is if you get into sort of a position a little bit like that. Obviously, you it's going to be hard to simulate what Kane Williamson does. But would you agree, Fultz?
Yeah, well, if you're going to play that back foot shot, he's obviously not a tall bloke, but what he does is he maximises, you know, his height. He gets he's up on his tiptoes. He's almost, you know, some of the time when he plays that shot, he's almost off the ground.
I think he's
trying to get up so high to get on top of the ball. Yeah, if you just roll it through, so he can actually get right up on top of the ball, front foot off, back foot right up on his tiptoes, so he can get on top of the ball and make sure that he hits it down. You know, you see a lot of guys, especially on bouncy wickets, trying to play a back foot shot like that, back foot drive, and end up nicking it, you know, into the slips because the ball gets too big on them. But he gets up nice and high. I think probably the other thing that he does really well when he plays that back foot shot, as a right-hander, he keeps his left shoulder, you know, he keeps his left shoulder side on and actually gets that left shoulder into the ball. He doesn't sort of, I guess, open up his shoulders and get square onto the bowler and just try and use his bottom hand to force it through the offside, which is also, I guess, something that batsmen do from sometimes. And if you do that and the ball does a little bit, then obviously you're at danger of, you know, you're a chance of nicking it.
And just sort of, I guess, related to young players as well, I see it a lot. I think that can help that and keeping your front shoulder sort of side on, I guess, to a degree, more side on than front on, is keeping that back toe relatively side on. As soon as you get that back toe, so Kane's right toe pointing at the bowler, your chest naturally opens up along with your hips, so it's really hard to play this shot. So that's
absolutely. I think probably sometimes it's, you know, for young batters, probably a good way to do it is if you're doing some sort of drill work where someone's, you know, either underarming or throwing to you back of your length and you're trying to, I guess, groove that back foot drive, just check from time to time on your back foot and almost in your stance, sometimes you might have to, even initially, you might have to actually, instead of having your right foot as a right-hander pointing straight at point, you might have to even just open it up slightly and angle it almost back towards gully, just a little bit, just to, I guess, allow you to get the feel of what that actually does. Because as you say, as soon as your feet, you know, square up and face back to the bowler, well, then your shoulders are going to have to follow.
Another good tip, you can put a little like a bit of tape or something down and even move just before the thrower's thrown it, which isn't a bad one to teach your body to get in the right position. We'll just go to the pull shot. I've got a couple of questions on this actually. Fulton, yeah, the answer's already there. Anyway, back foot shot, so yeah, he gets on top of it. We've gone through all that. But the pull shot, good sound of the bat, off the bat. Obviously extends his arms.
Yeah, nice straight arms, gets them out, so they're not bent. You know, get them out nice and straight to generate some power.
Yeah. And he does play the pull shot like this in a game, and I understand that obviously at that level, and you can obviously give your sort of feedback on your technique here as well and how you played it. Probably at that level when it's quick, you don't have time to get a full step back when you play the pull shot. And I think it's something that's probably getting out of the game now for batters. You see all the top line batters are just sort of, it's almost like a rock back and there's a weight transfer back onto their back foot. Is that how he practices, Kane?
Yeah. Again, he's just looking to, again, I guess not commit completely to the front foot. But I think probably as a batter, you know, you probably have to understand that even if you are facing someone who bowls quick, who might bowl short from time to time, you know, the majority of the balls that you get are going to be fuller because most bowlers, seam bowlers, are trying to bowl a length that's going to hit the top of off stump or somewhere around there or fuller. So probably, I think they've done studies in like international cricket, for example. I think 75%. I think about 75 or 80% of deliveries in the history of Test cricket, however long they've been recording the stats, 75 or 80% of balls are within, I think it's 6 metre length or fuller. So yeah, it's about expecting or looking for that fuller ball without committing too much. And then if they bowl short, like I say, then you're looking to prop back, and play the back foot shot from there. And the secret to that, as you got on the slide there, is that high hands. I think if you've got high hands, then you can actually control the ball, and you can still hit it for 6 if you want, but you've also got the option to hit it down. If your hands don't get up high enough, then you're always going to have to hit the ball up in the air, and you're going to be at risk of getting caught.
Yeah, love it, mate. And I guess that's where obviously training comes in. You're looking for that fuller ball, and then if it's not, instinct takes over in a game, but you need to train.
Yeah, I mean, when I started playing first class cricket, I didn't really play the pull shot a lot. I probably used to try and play more off the back foot drive, and I probably within a season, the other bowlers work you out, and they worked out that I wasn't going to play the pull shot, and they started bowling. If they were bowling shorter, they started bowling it in the body. And it only takes a couple of balls in the ribs before you think, actually, I need to find a different way of playing that, because it's not too much fun getting pinned in the ribs all season. And it's about, like I said, it's about grooving it at, even if it's starting with underarms, it's about grooving that muscle memory so that, as you say, when the bowler bowls short, the pull shot's it's an instinctive shot. Someone's bowling quick, you don't have time to see the ball and think, oh, that's short, I'm going to pull it. It's got to be instinctive.
Yeah, spot on, mate. So basically, how can everyone on here, or the kids, practice like Kane Williamson? Obviously, a lot of the nets and things are shut. So what I've got here, a bit of a challenge for the week, is shadow batting in front of a mirror. Big one for me, especially when you're sort of starting off and you're a youngster, and especially when you can't go to the nets, because you get automatic visual feedback. And then what I want you to do is go through this checklist and tick every one of those. So make sure your stance is slightly open, your eyes are level, head's really still, keep those hands in tight. And then a big one is keeping that back lift going to sort of the first, second slip, because a lot of young players, and I'm backing there's a few here that are watching, their back lift goes straight away to fine leg when they take that step. So that's a great thing about standing in front of a mirror and doing this. You can actually see what happens when you play a shot and shadow bat. If you're lucky enough that mum or your dad or your brother or sister's around and they can throw maybe underarm tennis balls to you, and you can do this and even just catch it rather than hit it, I think it's a really good drill to do just to teach your body and get into good habits and make use of this time and do something beneficial. Maybe over time, but I might just ask one question. Have you seen any good questions about Kane, Fitz?
Not so much about his technique or anything.
Okay.
It's more, have you seen anyone that works harder than Kane and whatnot?
All right. No, we'll leave it there then. We've gone over time already. Fulton, thanks heaps, mate. I hope everyone watching enjoyed it. I certainly did. I could keep going talking about batting. But yeah, really appreciate you jumping on, mate. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of it. And hopefully you can get back out into the world in New Zealand, enjoy the outdoors sooner rather than later, mate.
Yeah, no, not a problem, mate. I think probably just the only other thing I'd say about someone like Kane, like I say, his mindset when he goes to training is he just tries to get better every day. Just tries to get a little bit better. It might only be 1%, or just that's his mindset. It doesn't matter what he's doing, what drill he's doing, whether he's batting the nets, whatever. He just tries to get better every day. And I think he takes it one training at a time, one day at a time. And when you do that long enough, and you just build and build and build, then over time you see those improvements. So that's if I could offer one piece of advice, that's what I'd say. Just try to get better one training at a time.
Brilliant, mate. Thanks, Fulton.
Thanks a lot, Fulton.
Good luck with your role and batting coach, mate. In the future, hopefully you get on a tour and get out there again.
Not a problem, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.